Yesterday, on June 14, President Trump signed what he announced as a historic agreement that would reopen the Strait of Hormuz, the world's lifeline for oil and gas. In the early hours he posted, "Ships of the world, start your engines," and encouraged global commerce to flow free once again. But the headlines say more than the rhetoric. The deal, critics argue, handed far-reaching authority to Iran over the strait, a critical view that has turned into a bitter reality. This isn't the first time the US has tried to keep vessels moving through the narrow water lowercase. For 2 months, under a quiet arrangement with the Navy, commercial tankers turned off their transponders to avoid detection and Navy pilots radio-guided them down the southern side of the strait, hugging Oman's coast. The plan enabled an uptick in traffic during a tentative ceasefire in early April, when Iran and the United States had spoken off and the sea was calm. Now the same peace has crumbled. Iran's missile and drone strikes on ships have largely shut the strait, and after the ceasefire the shipping lanes were once again mined with danger. Tesla mine operators that tried to skirt Iran's coast on the southern route were later met by Iranian forces, forcing them to come north where Tehran can legally levy tolls or contain traffic. Last week, Iranian units struck 3 maritime vessels along that southern route, prompting President Trump to order airstrikes. Iran's Navy announced it had fired again and was closing the waterway until the end of U.S. interference. In response, U.S. Central Command announced it had struck roughly 140 Iranian targets, for a total of 310 U.S. strikes across the last week. Which means that the very contract Trump celebrated is now, according to watchdogs, a treaty that has effectively put the strait into Iranian hands. In his own words, the agreement has ended and is no longer governing. That alone sends shock waves through global markets. Energy analysts and voters alike are watching closely because more than a fifth of the world's oil and liquefied natural gas passes through the Strait of Hormuz before it reaches consumers. If the yard is shut and the region destabilizes, crude still might seem in or out, but global oil and gas prices are climbing by double digits as traders scramble for alternatives. In short, the US negotiated a deal that let Tehran host a new governing body, and now it has, after a brief period of calm, yielded to Iranian military pressure that threatens to shut down shipping lanes again. The price tag, increased volatility, higher global energy costs, and a stark reminder of how fragile geography can be. The story is still unfolding. We'll continue to monitor what Trump's announcements signaled for maritime strategy, and how the US believes it can protect or lose their access to the world's most critical oil corridor. Join us as we keep you updated. Thanks for listening, and remember that the tides of policy play out on both the seas and our wallets.